So this review is for Frenchy's Grease Scrapbook, written by Didi Conn, who of course plays Frenchy in the movie. And I'm always excited when I see a book written by someone who is involved with the process. However, I've been sort of burnt so many times before that now I'm sort of always wary of it. But when I actually settled in and sort of understood more what this book was and what it wasn't, I really found it very charming and very enjoyable as a fan of Grease. Initially, I was hoping that it was going to be much more of a making of book. There is absolutely plenty of great behind the scenes and filmmaking anecdotes and stories, but it wasn't necessarily like a normal sort of chronicle of the making of the film, which was initially sort of frustrating, especially because Didi Conn wasn't necessarily the strongest writer. But then I came to realize that this is actually, like it says on the cover, Frenchy's Grease Scrapbook, but really it's, Didi Conn's Grease Scrapbook, that's what the book is. It's sort of the making and the history of this movie as it relates to her experience. And if I had have heard someone say that, I would sort of still be pretty dismissive, because I'm not a big fan of when actors tend to write these sort of books, they very much, focus on themselves. And actors are very much known for having an ego, and, it wouldn't be the first time that some somewhat washed up star has come out and tried to capitalize on something good they were in once, but really it's just an excuse to sort of talk about themselves. But that's not what this book is at all. Didi Conn's writing style it is very sort of informal, but it really feels like you're maybe sitting with her in the living room and she's got this box of old Grease photos and she's going through just sort of telling you about what it was like working on the film, and then every now and then someone else from the cast will pop in and start talking about their things. That's what she does really well in this book, because she's done a lot of interviews for this book, and what she does is she lets them talk. She sort of sets the scene and then just lets them talk for paragraph after paragraph, rather than trying to extrapolate and rework their quotes into the body of the text. She just lets them talk and go on for sort of paragraph to paragraph, and that actually works really well. It really has a great sort of oral history sort of memoir, like you really are just sitting there listening to the person speak, and that works really well. I was put off a bit by how much it does focus on the actors rather than a lot of the other sort of production areas on the making of the film. But again, like I said, she is an actor, so that is her experience on working on this film. And yeah, like I said, once I came to accept that, I was really able to sort of indulge in this book and really enjoy it. As you can see, as we're going through now, it really just takes each of the sort of highlight scenes from the movie and then just sort of discusses them very quickly, way too quickly. You're always left wanting more on each section. So here we go. So here's like the Grease Lightning section. So you're getting sort of 2 paragraphs. So yeah, not a whole lot of text, and that's on just that section. And then here's when they're at the diner. So again, and then it goes into beauty school dropout. So it's not a lot of text, and you always wish there were more, but what is there is always really nice, really charming. A lot of really great sort of behind the scenes anecdotes. From the outside, I was skeptical about this book, and then even once I started reading it, I was still skeptical, but it really won me over. It's a very warm, charming sort of look back on the making of this film, and I really enjoyed it. Really, the only problem that this book has is sort of the opposite to a lot of other making of books, is that in this book the content is really nice, but the actual book itself is not very impressive. It has this sort of feel of kind of like a crappy old high school cheap textbook, which actually kind of might be appropriate for this movie, but it really does have sort of a cheap feel, and everything is in black and white except for there is one color section, but that's not really good. The photos are actually really nice. It's just that some of them are really poor quality, way too dark in areas, and you can't really make out any detail, and I wonder how many of them were just in black and white versus how many were in color and have been reproduced in black and white here, because the reason Didi Conn started this book is because her mother took tons of behind the scenes pictures when they were making the film and at the premiere and stuff like that, and that inspired her to create this book. And since this book was inspired by visual imagery, it seems a real shame that a lot of it is very sort of the quality is not very great. Now, I will say this book was published in 1998, I think, so 20 years after the movie came out, and now it's 20 years since this book came out almost. So it'd be really great to see like a sort of spruced up edition where, you know, we have the technology to sort of retouch and clean up a lot of the images and much nicer paper stock and higher quality imagery, because this film definitely deserves it. But even beyond a sort of more lavish, high quality version of this book, I really do think someone needs to do a bigger, more comprehensive book on the making of this movie, because it absolutely deserves it. And again, not because there's anything wrong with this book, it's just that there's still so much more to be said on this movie, particularly about the pre-production, post-production, other aspects of filmmaking not necessarily related to the actors. And so it's very strange that that hasn't been done for Grease. But in the meantime, this is still, I don't think you could be a fan of this movie and not find this book really, really delightful. The only part I really didn't like about the book that I completely skipped was this last third that we're going through now, is all just on like, where are they now? You know, catching up with the actors and just telling you what they've done. That I really did just skip this whole section, didn't read it, because I was just skimming through and realizing there was actually nothing related to Grease in these sections. It really is just focusing on not just the actors, but also like the dancers, the background dancers. What have they done in the last 20 years? And I mean, maybe this was sort of interesting, you know, before the internet really took off and everyone sort of has, you know, you can read people's tweets and Instagrams, see what they're doing at any given moment. But yeah, this was really just sort of filler nonsense for me. But still, not enough to detract from the really great first 2/3 of the book. Absolutely recommended for fans of this movie.